Hello, I'm Tony Cordato. I'm a real estate lawyer, which means I look after property transactions such as buying and selling, leasing, mortgages, strata title, and my favourite, vendor finance. Now this talk is going to be all about rent to own. Well, rent to own, rental purchase, lease options, they're all the same. This talk is one of a series. The series is called The Keys to Vendor Finance for Real Estate in Australia. So, rent to own. Well, the idea of rent to own is that a purchaser can rent a property and at the same time as they're renting, they can build up a deposit which they can use to actually buy the property at the end of the lease option rent to own period. Now, how it works is how it sounds. There's a rent document, which is a normal residential lease. And they pay rent under the residential lease, as you normally do. It increases every year according to inflation. There's a separate document. It's called an option. That's the to own document. And the option document gives the purchaser the right to buy the property via a contract for purchase. So they pay an upfront option fee and they'll pay an ongoing option fee, which I'll explain in this example. So assume we have a house for sale for $450,000. The rent to own purchaser will have a deposit. Maybe the deposit is $20,000. That'll be 4 and a bit percentage of the price. Well, that deposit is not good enough to get a bank loan. They may need 20% deposit for a bank loan, particularly in a regional area or for an unusual kind of property. For example, a shop with a residence upstairs is an unusual kind of property. So there has to be some way of saving up the rest of the deposit. So assume the rent is $400 per week. That just gets paid as rent always does get paid, straight to the landlord. The option will have the $20,000 upfront money plus a weekly ongoing option fee of $200 per week. So you can see that if the purchaser is paying $200 per week for 52 weeks, that's $10,400 a year. So they've paid $20,000 and now they're going to pay another $10,400 per year. Now, it'll take them 6, 7 years possibly, but let's call it 5 years because most of these rent to owns go between 3 and 5 years. So over the 5-year period, they will have paid $20,000 and have added $200 a week to come to round about $90,000, which is 20% of the price. It's then a simple thing for them to go to the bank and say, "Bank, can you give us 80%? Bank will say yes. Now, the good thing about it for a purchaser is that they can speed this up by improving the property. Most people know which end of a paintbrush to hold so that they can paint the outside of the house, and maybe which end of a paint roller to hold to do the inside. Some people will be able to order a new kitchen. New kitchens add value. Some people, some very good people, will perhaps update the bathroom. Others might do a little bit of landscaping or fix up the fences. For a lot of people, they will have improved the value enough in 2 to 3 years so that they can go to the bank and borrow enough money to pay out the purchase price. Because you remember, the purchase price remains $450,000. It's a fixed target. So you either add to the deposit by the weekly option fee payments, or you improve the property, or do both. Well, you do both. That is the formula for a purchaser, and also helps a vendor if the property's run down. Not all that easy to sell run-down properties in a flat market. Rent to own's great. Some people will sell it to their tenants. The tenants may have great jobs and may be interested in paying a little bit extra per week to own the house instead of just renting it. It's a very flexible tool. Now, of course, the purchaser doesn't have the title in their name. That stays with the vendor. But the purchaser has the right to register what's known as a caveat over the title to the property to secure their interest in the property so that the vendor can't sell it to anyone else and in fact can't mortgage it to anyone else. They've got to stay with their existing mortgage until this buyer exercises the option to buy the property. And if you're into tax for vendors, there's no capital gains tax if you sell a property this way until the purchaser exercises the option and enters into the contract for sale. So that's a real plus. You can defer your capital gains tax for a fairly long time. So lots of advantages to it. If you're a vendor, you have to get the purchaser qualified to pay, obviously not only the rent, but the whole lot, the rent and the option fees. They have to be able to afford that. And the rent and the option fees have to be something like enough to pay a mortgage had the purchasers taken out a 30-year mortgage over the property. So in my example of $600 per week, $400 rent, $200 option fee, then that would be fine. They would be paying fairly close to what they'd be paying under a mortgage. So great tool, except in Victoria, where they've banned it, and South Australia, where you're limited to 4 payments. Everywhere else in Australia, it's a great tool to use to both buy a property and sell a property. For more information, go to my website, www.vendorfinancelawyer.com.au.